You're listening to Leisure World Direct. I'm your host, GRF Communications Manager Emma DiMaggio, and I'm joined by Interim Executive Director Dave Potter and IT Director Marcelo Mario. Hi, guys.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Today's topic is the Leisure World Pedestrian Gates and some initial proposed changes. To start, how many pedestrian gates are there in Leisure World, and how do they currently operate?
There's a total of 6 gates in Leisure World. We have North Gate, Mary's Gate, Main Gate, St. Andrew's Gate, Church Gate, and Jim's Gate. Currently, right now, they operate by inserting a card and it opening the gates.
So the card has a reader inside, and it reads it and authorizes it as a resident.
In a sense, yes. It is a magnetic card that mechanically lifts certain magnets inside of the mechanism, and it allows a switch to be hit.
Okay.
So it's standalone technology, right? It's just there at the gate. It's not connected to anything.
Yes, it is standalone
Okay.
technology, when what that means is it's not really controllable. We've been using the same card for years now, and these cards aren't recoverable. So if anybody loses their card, or if someone leaves the community and still has their card, they still have access. There's no way to turn that card off.
Interesting. Who uses the gates right now?
Residents.
It's hard to say exactly, right? Because we don't have a monitoring system in place for the pedestrian gates. So
Yeah, there's no metric. There's no way to get any metrics on foot traffic through these gates. I would imagine there's a lot, because I've spent a lot of time at the gates, and I do see a lot of pedestrians at North Gate and St. Andrew's Gate come through there every day.
I assume some of those people might look frustrated sometimes because the pedestrian gates I hear are failing, are not working very well currently. Is that true?
Yes. Frequently, depending on how they insert the card, it might not trigger the right magnets to come up, and the switch doesn't work.
You've told me in the past that the system is defunct. Can you explain a little bit more what that means?
So the company that makes the mechanism for the key card system, as well as the cards, is no longer in business. They went out of business probably in 2022.
Wow. What are we doing right now when something breaks or a wire burns?
Whatever can be done to keep the gate so that it will open for people. But the company is out of business. There is no ability to get replacement parts. So there's a lot of improvisation that's going on keeping these things working. And unfortunately, that's not sustainable for the long term.
I guess that's where these proposals come in. Can you describe to me what the 2 initial proposals are to solve this problem?
Okay, so based off of a community policy, there has to be a key card system at the gate. So I looked at a comprehensive solution that we can use to, one, use existing technology we already have, such as PropTIA, and 2, improve the experience for anyone entering the gates. So there's 2 different...
Before you propose them, can you explain what PropTIA is for those who might not know?
So PropTIA is our gate access system currently. It allows for residents to enter guests in, and it's a way for us to...
For the vehicle gate.
For the vehicle gate, yes. So again, it's PropTIA is a solution that we have in place for the vehicle gates, and it allows visitors and residents alike to come in, and whether you have an RFID tag or if you're on a visitor list, you're granted access through the system.
So some folks in the community sometimes ask, how do we, when we're doing a large project like this, and this winds up being a larger project than you might initially think, and we'll get into that a little more later, but they ask, how do you wind up with some of the decisions that you do? So Marcelo alluded to, there is actually a policy on the books that says the pedestrian gates are governed by a key card system. okay, there are other alternatives out there for gate entry besides a key card. As a starting point, the policy on the book says key card system, so we will start by trying to develop a key card system for anything that we're proposing. That doesn't mean that that's what the final answer has to be, because the board can certainly change its policy, but staff is going to start from that because that's on the books, and we're not going to necessarily propose something that goes against the existing policy that's there. And then once you do that, you look at, well, do we want to work with our existing technology that we already have at the main gates, PropTIA, where we already have a lot of this data on hand, and it would just be a matter of then allowing access on the pedestrian gate side? That actually makes a certain amount of financial sense because we're working with a system we're already paying for, and it's also keeping the data in fewer locations. If we were to open this up and look at other software systems, not only would we maybe pay more, but now people's data are being retained in an additional location, which is going to decrease the security of the data. The more places you have it, the less secure it's going to be over time. So again, as a starting point, we're going to say, let's see what we can do with expanding PropTIA out from the vehicle gates to the pedestrian gates as well, because that provides the best opportunity for security of shareholder data, and it also provides the best opportunity to control what the ongoing cost is going to be.
Yeah.
So we're already on a decision tree. That's kind of how we're already ticking through how do we get to what these proposals are that we're putting in front of the board as our suggested solutions for it.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt,
Synergy.
Marcelo.
No, go Wade. With those premises, what did you come up with, Marcelo?
So we came up with two different solutions. One would be a comprehensive solution. It has not only gate access, but also added security features such as an intercom and a camera system. So the intercom, not only would it be for communicating in case there's an emergency, like let's say a resident is trying to get in at the gate and can't, instead of having to, let's say they're in a scooter. If they go to the gate and are having issues, they can hit a button and communicate with security instead of having to risk running out of battery and going all the way around to get to some sort of help. For the cameras, there are no cameras there currently because there's just no way to get communications out to the camera. And a lot of the driver for the higher costs of this full scope implementation is not only just the cameras and the access system and the
cards.
It's also the cards, but it's also the cameras and the intercom. There needs to be a way to communicate with all these different systems, and so the higher cost of the full scope includes improving the community and adding a way for these systems to communicate.
Oh, so like the intercom could talk to the security shack at the main gate, or the cameras could be connected to.
That's part of it. The other part, I think, is that Marcelo alluded to earlier, because these are all standalone technologies, it's a physical reader, if you will, right? The card with the right magnetic code on it gets put in, and that triggers the gate to open. But if you go to the store and you drop your card somewhere, someone picks up a Leisure World Seal Beach ID, they know they can go to the gate and they can enter the community that way.
Yeah.
If we network the gates to PropTIA, now we have the same ability that we do with the vehicle RFIDs. If someone loses it, it's just a matter of going into the system, changing the setting so that it's reported as lost, and now that card no longer works. It's a way to help increase security and better control access for the community. So those are the benefits of networking all of these gates together. You get security with the cards, control over the cards if they're lost or stolen or whatever. You can add the intercom in so that people have the ability to talk to security if something does happen. And at that point, adding on the cameras is actually, it's not that expensive.
Not at all.
I mean, if you get to the point where you want to do those two things, adding on the cameras is actually a very inexpensive prospect at that point.
What are the sort of technical aspects of making the systems talk to each other? Are you running fiber or?
Yeah, so in the full scope solution, because of all the technology that sits on it, such as the camera system and intercom and the gates themselves, it does require a means of communication, and wireless is not going to work because all these places are not near trust property where we could put directional antennas to get the communications out there, and that is what drives the requirement for the fiber installation.
So if you get to see one of the presentations that are done on this, there is a slide that illustrates this problem. It's hard to on an audio-only podcast, but particular to the St. Andrews gates, there's no direct line of sight to other areas of trust property where we can then connect the St. Andrews gate with the internet at the bandwidth that's needed.
Correct.
To do that level of data transmission for an intercom and for the communication of the cards back and forth.
That makes sense. It also makes sense since if they're all pedestrian gates, they're all on the corners of or the crust of the community, so they'd all be far away from everything inherently.
And there are 3 that are down by St. Andrews that really drive a lot of the cost of this. The other 3 are, I'm not going to say there's no cost to it, but it's a much more manageable task to connect those to our network and do the things that we'd like to do.
Yes.
So if we strip away all of the features, what is the modified scope proposal?
So the modified scope does away with the intercom and the camera system, and also the fiber installation. We would only need the gate access system and the cards.
And that's because once you get rid of the cameras and the intercoms, those are what take up the bulk of the bandwidth that's needed to transmit from the physical gate location to the network. We're able to use an alternative method at that point that doesn't necessarily require the same line of sight because we don't need the same amount of bandwidth to just transmit the data for the cards back and forth.
Would PropTIA still be involved in the modified scope?
Yes. So PropTIA still is the core of this because that is our resident and visitor management system that we're going to use as the backbone for this.
Yeah. It's just a premise because of all the synergy that happens, or it's already on hand.
Yeah. If we didn't already have this gate, the vehicle gate access system that we did, we would probably be proposing a couple of different technology solutions. But since we already have that here, it makes sense to use that as our starting point, as our home base, if you will.
Can we talk about the time factor here? Why is this coming up now?
It's coming up now because of all the issues we've been having at the gates. Also, we have run out of the cards, the original cards that came with the gates. We've been sourcing it from a company that only works a fraction of the time. Not all the cards work, and there's no way to guarantee it or write it because we don't have any of the ability to write to the cards.
So there is a failure rate that is happening with the cards that we issue now. That's a known problem. It's a better problem than issuing no cards until we figure out what's going to happen with the gates, though. But the problem is only going to become bigger because there is a known failure rate on those cards. And as they become more prevalent in the community, that's going to increase the amount of problems that people have with getting into the gates.
So it'd be better to start issuing fully working 100% of the time cards as soon as possible.
Yes, and you can't do that until you know what the card reader technology is because these things aren't portable. I can't just buy a card that works on card reader X and then install technology from card reader company Y.
Correct. Each card system that we would use, even though they're encrypted to industry standards, they are licensed to PropTIA. If we were to just use PropTIA or if we were to go with another solution, they would have their license on top of that. And so we need to make sure that we decide on a platform where we can get the proper licensing in place for the cards.
So if we commit to one of these systems, whichever one it is, and it's connected to PropTIA, I know people have been talking about scalability. For the future, how else could these card readers be used in the community, or what are people sort of thinking of right now?
Well, the cards can be used for other things. Like I said, they're going to be the new resident cards. So currently right now, residents use these cards for identification at amenities as well as the library. We can use this card system to add amenities for golf or the gym, just to make sure that a resident is authorized to be there. So at the pool, we can even expand it to, say, the amphitheater if we wanted to.
The board has asked us from time to time to not always just be looking in the moment when we're looking at a problem, but to try to look over the horizon. And I think the term that's used sometimes is to future-proof, or to make something that's scalable for the future. And that's part of the solution that we're trying to put together here, is not just something that solves a security problem or an access problem or an ID card problem that exists at the pedestrian gates right now today, but is also something that could be used in the future if the board were to decide that, hey, let's put some kind of a working ID card system for access to the aquatic center, just so we can make sure that past residents or people that found an ID aren't using that there. Would also give us very firm data on how much use these things get. Because right now we're going off of hand records, and those are not always reliable at the end of the day. So this solution doesn't allow for any of that right now. It's not included in any of the scope of anything, but it's just, here is a backbone, and here is something that you can now expand on in the future if you so desire.
What are some things that people don't like about these proposals?
Outside of the cost?
Let's talk about the cost.
The cost it's not insignificant. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat that. And a lot of that cost is related to the simple installation of an infrastructure to connect the gates. If we were just talking about hardware for the gates, technology for card readers, even for the intercoms and cameras, if all of the internet connectivity was already there, this would be substantially less. But it's not. We have to kind of build an infrastructure in order to accomplish this. That is the bulk of the cost for the full-up model.
Yep.
And then it's to a lesser extent, it's part of the cost of the reduced scope model, where it's just a card reader, because we're using more of a radio communication there as opposed to a hard cable.
Yes.
But it's still a significant cost. The other large piece of this, and this is harder to get around, is if we're going to do this, we're now going to need to switch out cards for people. And that's going to take some labor. Now, there are some ways that perhaps we can use some volunteers, or we can do it in phases. There are ways to try to minimize that cost, but it's going to be pretty hard to eliminate it. So I will say that the number we have in the proposal right now is, I would say, a worst-case scenario. We're going to try to find ways to knock that down, but I would still want to budget for that, just because if something were to go wrong, I would rather have that money in the project budget so we're ready for it, and exceed people's expectations on the spend for that card conversion cost, if you will.
Is there anything else that people object to in the project?
No, I think the main driver is cost. There's a little bit of apprehensiveness to the system because of, I guess, past project rollouts, but for this specific project, we've actually thought of pretty much as we could. We've thought of any issues that may arise or any roadblocks and ways around them.
Part of the process of what we're doing here, though, and I really applaud the board for pushing this, is to make sure that we're communicating with the community about it before it's launched. I know in the past some projects have kind of successfully gone through a committee and a board vote for approval, and the community doesn't necessarily have a lot of heads up about it. This is something that, if it were approved, it is going to touch everybody here. If we're going to switch out the ID cards, that's something that's going to affect every resident. We want to make sure that people have an opportunity to find out about this, to understand what the thought process is from staff, and to give feedback. Because yes, we've tried to think of everything, but it's very possible somebody may think of something that we hadn't. And we want to hear that before the board moves forward with something like this. So it's something that needs to be done soon, is what I would say. It's not something that needs to be done immediately, though. So we are trying to take the time to reach out to the community, not just through the newspaper, but here in the podcast. There's a town hall coming up at the end of October. We want to have an informational exchange and dialogue with everyone so that they can feel as comfortable as they're going to about whatever's going to happen. because the one thing that's certain to me is that we have to make some kind of a change at those gates.
Is there anything else you think is important for people to understand about this decision-making process or about the project itself?
Well, I've been asked by residents why we need a card reader system and why we can't just use a keypad or a lock pad or even manual keys. My answer to that is it's not really feasible to implement something like that. We have over 9,000 residents in this community, which means if we had to roll out 9,000 keys, we wouldn't be able to lock out a key if it was lost or if the key walked off the property when someone left. We would have to reissue over 9,000 keys. And for the keypads, it's the same thing. There's no way to manage any standalone system where we would be able to lock out credentials if it was lost or stolen.
I think of that like at community or apartment pools. One person has the keypad number and shares it with someone else, and then some other family has the keypad number, and then suddenly everyone has access to the pool because there's no way to, change the number over and over and over again and make sure that everyone knows the right one.
Right.
There are ways to do it. I mean, I will say that if we put some kind of a sign up at the gate that said, hey, call the main gate to get the daily code.
Yeah.
And change the code every day, that would probably increase the workload for our security officers. And I don't know that everybody who uses the gates is going to have a cell phone on them at all times, nor are they going to want to always call and have to go through that process to get a gate code. So there are ways to do it. I don't know that there's ways that are going to be acceptable to enough of the community from a customer service standpoint that they're going to be workable.
Understood. Well, for those of you who are interested in attending the town hall, it is on Wednesday, October 29th from 1 to 3 p.m. in Clubhouse 4. Marcelo will be there answering questions, and so will Dave and the rest of the board. So all are invited to come down.
I don't know if the rest of the board will be there, in all fairness to them.
There will be a presence of board members somewhere,
Okay.
and it is hosted by the GRF board.
Yes.
You are listening to Leisure World Direct.